We are back with a Fox News alert. Former President Donald Trump heads to Miami today as he faces dozens of charges over his handling of classified documents.
Both federal and local authorities ramping up security measures ahead of tomorrow's hearing as his supporters rally around him. Jonathan Sari live for us this morning in Miami with the very latest. Morning, Jonathan.
Morning, Kevin. Former President Trump is expected to travel to Miami today to meet with his legal team 1 day ahead of his scheduled appearance at this federal courthouse in Miami to answer to those charges. He's been indicted on 37 counts related to the alleged mishandling of classified White House documents stored in various locations around his Mar-a-Lago estate in Palm Beach, Florida. The charges include 31 counts of willful retention of national defense information, with other charges related to Mr. Trump's alleged efforts to conceal the documents from federal investigators. South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham says although he doesn't like certain things the former president did, Mr. Trump faces a double standard.
Most Republicans believe we live in a country where Hillary Clinton did very similar things and nothing happened to her. President Trump will have his day in court, but espionage charges are absolutely ridiculous. Whether you like Trump or not, he did not commit espionage. He did not disseminate, leak, or provide information to a foreign power or to a news organization to damage this country. He is not a spy.
Other Republicans accuse the Justice Department of slow-stepping investigations into allegations of impropriety with President Biden's financial dealings with a foreign national when he was vice president.
I read it again and I realized that there were 2 footnotes in there that referenced other 1023s. This is going to turn out, I think, a lot like the suspicious activity reports that the Treasury Cabinet had on the Bidens. There are a lot more of these than what the federal government wants to admit. And the question is, why hasn't the federal government done anything about it?
One of the nation's leading legal scholars says accusations that special counsel Jack Smith targeted Trump could play well in court for the former president.
Well, I predicted it. If you put aside all your resources and do what Justice Jackson warned about 80 years ago, where he said it's a question of picking the man and then searching the law books or putting investigators to work to pin some offense on him. That's what they did. And Jack Smith is wrong when he says there's one set of laws. He was assigned only one job: to get Trump.
At rallies over the weekend, Mr. Trump accused the Justice Department of trying to suppress his political ambitions, but he tells Politico even if he is convicted, he will continue to campaign for a second term in the White House.
Oh, I bet there's rich folks eating from a fancy dining car. They're probably drinking coffee and smoking big cigars. Well, I know I had it coming. I know I can be free. But those people keep a moving, and that's what tortures me.
Today is Monday, June 12th, 2023. Trump to appear in court tomorrow as he rails against Democrat communists who jail their opponents. Fact check true. House GOP will review more documents detailing Joe Biden's Ukraine bribery scandal. And Joe Biden whistleblower Mike McCormick joins the show live. This is a big one, baby. Who's behind it all? His name rhymes with Schmobama. My name is Benny Johnson, and this is The Benny Show. Ladies and gentlemen, you don't want to miss the news these days. You don't want to be unconnected to what's happening in the country. Things are moving very, very fast, and the communists want you to not pay attention. That's why you got to be wide awake. By the way, are you wide awake this morning? If you are in the Benny Brigade, shout out where you're watching from. I want to know. Let me know. Where you watching from? I want to see it in the comments section. We got the comments right there. I can watch them roll in. Where are you watching from? And to you haters out there, stay salty, die mad. Ladies and gentlemen, Patriot Mobile is the phone service that I use. I use it to stay connected. I use it to see the comments roll in. I use it to do the show. We're watching. We're looking. We're staying connected. We're traveling this weekend in Dallas. And my cell phone service was perfect. That's why I encourage you to switch to Patriot Mobile. It is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. It offers dependable nationwide coverage in all 3 major networks, and you get the best possible service in your area without giving leftists more of your hard-earned cash. Go to patriotmobile.com/Benny. patriotmobile.com/Benny to get free activation today with the offer code Benny. Go today. Ladies and gentlemen, Donald Trump went down to Georgia. Devil went down to Georgia. And Donald Trump was there to meet him with a fiddle this weekend. Donald Trump made his first appearance after we found out that Joe Biden has turned America into essentially a dumber version of the Soviet Union, run by more decrepit and corrupt individuals and with less cool mustaches. I mean, Joseph Stalin was a really, really evil man, arguably the greatest mass murderer of his own people of all time. But at least he had a cool mustache. Joe Biden doesn't even have that. Joe Biden's hair is fake. Can't even grow real hair. His hair's plastic. He was bald as a bat in the 70s. Fake plastic teeth. There's nothing redeeming about creepy old Joe Biden, and now he is plunging this country, of course, into totalitarianism. Well, I was traveling this weekend. I posted this on my Instagram and up on Twitter and Facebook. Traveling this weekend to speak to the Young Women's Conference at Turning Point USA in Dallas, and I was standing at the airport baggage carousel waiting for my bags. When you travel with kids, it's effectively like you're invading Iraq, the amount of bags and luggage you got to take with you everywhere, because you have the kids' beds and their car seats and everything. I brought my family with us to Dallas, and a woman came up to me from Venezuela, and in short, I'll tell you, she's just like, this is going the way of Venezuela, this country. Joe Biden's a puppet. He's a puppet, and he has evil puppet masters. They're evil people, and they only know how to destroy. I've seen it. I've seen it with Hugo Chavez. This woman, her name was Ruby, and she's like, this is the way your country's going. Imprisoning their political enemies, going after Christians, going after the faithful. This is how it's going down. This is how it went down in my country. This is why I'm a refugee in America. This woman was from Midland, Texas, and her husband works in the oil industry because the oil industry in Venezuela was taken over by the communists. This is what's happening here. She laid it all out for me, and she says, we got to pray, and we do. We got to stay strong, and we got to keep our eye on the ball, and so we got to focus. Donald Trump is fighting this. We are fighting this, and ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be one hell of a ride. Trump in Georgia. Democrat communists want to put me in jail. They want to jail their opponents. Donald Trump.
Biden is trying to jail his leading political opponent, an opponent that's beating him by a lot in the polls, just like they do in Stalinist Russia or communist China. No different.
So Donald Trump saying that there's no coincidence that the indictment itself was dropped right when bombshell evidence of Joe Biden's corruption hit the wires. In fact, the day that we found out that Donald Trump was being indicted, we had Lauren Boebert on our show. This was Thursday of last week, and Lauren Boebert had just come fresh off the skiff. I mean, she was smoking, baby. She'd come straight from the skiff reviewing Joe Biden's FT 1023 documents. And she was on our show telling us everything that's going on. They now have the bombshell evidence, and we are going to actually dive into on this program what we know about who's truly behind the protection racket here. Who are they actually protecting in all of this? We know who it is. We know who had the power to actually give the orders. It wasn't actually Joe Biden. There's an entire infrastructure here designed to protect the real puppet master behind Barack Obama's third term in the White House. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no coincidence that they dropped this indictment right when they knew that Joe Biden's crimes would come full circle. Watch.
It's no coincidence they indicted me the very same day it was revealed that the FBI hid explosive evidence that Joe Biden took a $5 million illegal bribe from Ukraine. Now, this is done. I haven't read anything about it. This would have been the biggest story in history 10 years ago.
Yeah, they impeached Donald Trump for Joe Biden's crimes. Put it on a t-shirt, slap it on your car, bumper sticker. Put it on a coffee mug and have a little sip, blackout coffee. They impeached Joe Biden they impeached Donald Trump for Joe Biden's crimes. Remember, Donald Trump was just like, hey, man, this guy's corrupt as hell in Ukraine. You got to look into this. Up! Impeach him. Boom. Got him. Got him. You can't ask questions about that because you're actually getting at something that makes us very uncomfortable. You're actually right over the target. Because being over the target looks like looking into who had the power to give Joe Biden the capacity to actually do corrupt deals in Ukraine. Who had the power to actually withhold money in Ukraine? Start asking those questions and you'll start asking the right questions. And a reminder, on this program, we will be joined in person by a former member of the Obama administration, a whistleblower against Joe Biden, somebody who's traveled on a plane to Ukraine with Joe Biden. Mike McCormick will join the program shortly, so stay tuned. Now, somebody who's also a friend of the show, Alan Dershowitz, the foremost, inarguably most famous defense lawyer in the country, was saying, hey, yo, listen, we got some major problems here. Donald Trump was specifically targeted in this case, and you have a right to obstruct people who are coming after you for political purposes. Alan Dershowitz, Hillary Clinton supporter, Bill Clinton supporter, defending Donald Trump. Interesting. Watch.
Now, there's no evidence that they actually allowed anybody to read the material, but it's a defense, and it will be a fascinating trial. It is not a slam dunk conviction.
Yeah, that's great points, both of you. Did you talk about that legal twist that you were referring to earlier, Alan?
The legal twist is yes. What if, in fact, there is evidence that would be enough to go to a jury, but that evidence would never have been obtained if not for the illegal, unlawful, and unconstitutional targeting only of Republicans rather than Democrats or blacks other than whites or Trump other than anybody else? That's going to be a very interesting, novel argument that eventually the Supreme Court might accept.
Holy smokes. Our in-house attorney, Mike Davis, just got his angel wings. Good for him. Because Alan Dershowitz just used Mike Davis's terminology, illegal and unconstitutional raid on Donald Trump's home. Way to go, Mike. Mike Davis is then on this program arguing, he's our in-house attorney, you know him well if you watch the program, arguing that there is something called the Presidential Records Act. And in this indictment information that they released about Donald Trump, including the embarrassing photos of boxes stashed places, so weird that they never released photos of Joe Biden's garage. They never released photos of the water closet that Hillary Clinton's server was on. They never released those photos. You never get photos of Joe Biden, Barack Obama keeping his documents at a McDonald's. Man, I'm loving it. You never ever get to see those. Joe Biden was keeping his documents inside of the trunk of a Corvette inside of a garage that Hunter Biden had access to and that the Chinese government had a key to. We know that because of Hunter Biden's laptop. We can actually see his meeting schedule. He was meeting with CCP-affiliated business partners in the home with the classified documents. And there was no security. Barack Obama kept his classified documents deep fat fried in a McDonald's in Chicago. Literally a storage unit next to a McDonald's. You order a Big Mac and you get maybe a document shoved in there. Special sauce. Bill Clinton kept them in a sock drawer. Hillary Clinton had no right to have the classified documents because she was never president. Neither was Joe Biden. It's a totally different thing with Clinton and Obama because at least they were president and they're covered and protected by something called the Presidential Records Act, which means that if you were president, then you have the plenary power to hold classified information because all of the power actually exudes from you. It's very much like being a royal in a sense. It's the best our founders could come up with. There is an executive, and within that man or woman, doesn't preclude woman, but has never been a woman. Thank God, not Hillary. Within that person, there exudes the power to hold, to present, to maintain, to classify or unclassify these documents. You are the chief executive and the commander-in-chief. It is a very different thing for somebody who has not been the chief executive or the president. It's a very different thing for Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden. Donald Trump has that power vested in him. It's like magic. But you know what? The Constitution is a powerful document. And this is how our system works. Jim Jordan arguing that point in favor of Donald Trump and saying that all of this is really, really, really flimsy. Watch.
email. I want to read something that you said about Hillary Clinton's email server in 2016. You wrote in an opinion article, quote, whether through incompetence or willful disregard for security protocol, Hillary Clinton jeopardized national security for personal gain. Why do you think this behavior is horrible when Democrats mishandle classified information, allegedly, but there is nothing wrong at all when Republicans do?
You're missing the key. You're missing the fundamental distinction. She was Secretary of State. President Trump was President of the United States. The Supreme Court decision in Navy versus Egan wasn't about the Secretary of State. The Constitution doesn't say, oh, the Secretary of State can classify and can control access to national security information. It says the President. That is the key distinction. But the left doesn't care. They are so determined to get President Trump. They've been going after him since before he ran, when they took a dossier they knew was false, took it to a secret court, got a warrant, and spied on 4 American citizens associated with his campaign, and it's continued to this day. And anyone with common sense can see that.
Boom, shaka, laka. You wonder why CNN doesn't bring on more Republicans, because it's really easy to knock down those strawmen. The man who was in charge of the national intelligence for the Trump administration, a man named John Ratcliffe, was saying, wait a second, we're seeing a lot of information come out against Donald Trump. I seem to remember that there is a special counsel looking into Joe Biden's handling of classified information. Joe Biden had no power to maintain classified information, unlike Donald Trump, who was president. Joe Biden was not president. Joe Biden was selling classified secrets to the highest bidder. Joe Biden, as we will prove to you, was, with Barack Obama's permission, maintaining these business relationships in order to profit off of classified information, things that are so much worse than what they're accusing Donald Trump of doing. And John Ratcliffe saying, hey, what the hell's going on? What? We're getting photos of Donald Trump's bathroom documents, but nothing, not a peep out of the special counsel looking into Joe Biden. Everyone's forgotten about that. Go.
Look, let's be real easy about this. As a former federal prosecutor, I can tell you when you line up the cases against Secretary of State Clinton, President Donald Trump, and Senator Joe Biden, there's no reasonable prosecutor that won't tell you that the easiest case to make, a slam dunk case, is that Senator Joe Biden broke the law. There is no legal excuse, justification, or rationale that ever justifies a United States senator having possession of classified documents in his home and his office. And it wouldn't have taken Jack Smith applying the laws evenly, even 7 months to move forward on a case against Joe Biden. He would have moved forward in 7 days, which begs the question, it did take him 7 months in his prosecution of President Trump to get to this point. Where's the special counsel that was appointed to investigate Joe Biden? It's been 5 months. We haven't seen a story. You could put out a missing persons report on Robert Hur, the special counsel that was appointed in this case. But if we apply the laws evenly, as Jack Smith says that we should, in any case, at least by the early part of August, we ought to have Robert Hur moving forward in 7 months saying, here's the case against Joe Biden, and this is what it means.
Joe Biden had no constitutional authority or right to maintain classified documents. He had thousands of them in 5 different locations that we know of. We haven't seen a single leaked photo of that. We've never seen a photo of Joe Biden's closet or whatever awful Hunter Biden cocaine, crack lace, dildo collection document stash that he might have had. There's no embarrassing leaked photos at all of that. Reminder, the photos that were put online from Hunter Biden's documents had to be taken down for because they include child predations. That's the kindest possible way we can put that. Just let that ruminate for a second. They weren't allowed to publish the documents or the images on Hunter Biden's laptops and mobile devices because they included too many images of children. What does that tell you, ladies and gentlemen? These are evil individuals, obviously. We've covered this. These are individuals who are going to warp and manipulate the law in order to get Donald Trump, accused Donald Trump of the crimes of which they are guilty of, that is the iron law of wokeism, And we are going to show you precisely how that worked in this situation. And who's actually responsible for all of this? Who's the guy at the very tippy top? It's a perfect day to be joined by a Joe Biden whistleblower who will be on the program shortly, Mike McCormick, somebody who worked for the Obama administration. Meanwhile, we have a man who is running in the 2024 election cycle against Donald Trump. His name's Vivek Ramaswamy. Vivek has, I think, had the most interesting 2024 run of anyone thus far. This man is really, really carving up the country in it's sort of a barnstorm here. It's been fascinating. We're going to be doing a public event with Vivek in Pennsylvania, but Vivek was invited on CNN this weekend, and he made such a great point about the media utterly and completely ignoring Donald Trump, ignoring the conflict of interest here with Merrick Garland and Joe Biden in favor of coverage of Donald Trump. He did it to the media's face. We thought it was absolutely bombshell. Way to go, Vivek. Watch.
With due respect, I think it is shameful that I, as a competitor to President Trump in this race, have to ask questions that the media isn't asking. The job of the political media, if it has one job, is to hold the U.S. government accountable.
Yes, we know that.
And instead, we're doing the bidding. You're seeing the media doing the bidding of the U.S. government. No. Ask the question. Get to the bottom of what Biden told Garland and what Garland told Jack Smith. If the same shoe fit the other foot, you would not take their word at face value. Do not take their word now. Get to the bottom of it. Let's actually restore journalism in this country. That's what's actually missing, is getting to the truth.
Okay. Thank you for that. We are absolutely asking these questions.
Good.
The job of the media is to hold the U.S. government accountable, and instead you're doing the bidding of the U.S. government. Bingo. There are a few honest people out there. Very interesting, actually, to see the breaking points here. We have Joe Rogan, Elon Musk, obviously, saying this looks deeply corrupt. Both of these people aren't defending Donald Trump, but they are coming out and saying, wait a second, isn't Hillary Clinton guilty of the exact same thing? Isn't this a dual justice system? Isn't this exactly what you have in third world countries? And you would expect clear-eyed, independent thinkers like Joe Rogan and like Elon Musk to do that. But what about raving lunatic, sycophant, race-obsessed professional Democrats like Stephen A. Smith of ESPN? Somebody that is employed by the Jeffrey Epstein Protector Network of ABC. Somebody who is a absolute, again, lunatic for the left. When you've lost this guy, when this Donald Trump indictment is starting to break down the Stephen A. Smiths of the world, you have a huge problem. Stephen A. Smith has been going in hard against Joe Biden on all this, and it's been fascinating to watch. Like you're really losing people. Okay, if I'm standing at the baggage carousel, and a woman from Venezuela comes up to me to tell me how scared she is to live in America now because she's actually watching the same tactics of communists, plus Stephen A. Smith, plus Elon Musk, plus Joe Rogan, you're starting to line up a lot of people saying, we don't believe the BS you're shoveling at us anymore. If you actually want to put Donald Trump in jail, you had better lock up Hillary Clinton for the rest of her life first. You got major issues here. Stephen A. Smith, man, watch.
Wasn't that popular of a candidate, at least before the primaries in South Carolina. Up until that point, he wasn't even in the game as far as a lot of people were concerned. And so because of that, when you look at it from that perspective, Chris, what it comes down to is you're going to have people sitting up there on his side and saying they can't beat him legitimately, and it's going to add it's going to add momentum to his argument that they're exhausting themselves with doing everything they can to prevent him from being the Republican nominee because they can't beat him. That's what they're going to say.
Well, that's his case.
Whoa! What? Chris Cuomo, we can't play that clip enough. You have Chris Cuomo, you have Stephen A. Smith on there being like, you can't beat Donald Trump legitimately, so you're going to try and put him in jail? And they're both agreeing? They're both being like, yeah, I mean, actually, that's what it looks like. Man, you got Charlemagne the God saying he's not a Democrat anymore because of Joe Biden. This is a regime that is crumbling. This is a regime that is crumbling. We are going to have a regular segment on this program, which is our 2024 campaign update. Ladies and gentlemen, here we go. What? No, Joe Biden looks way too cool. Hold on. Avery, Royce, Rolls-Royce and his brother Avery make some of these graphics. We got to change Joe Biden. Joe Biden looks way too cool there. Joe Biden is Scorpion. What wrestler is that? No, he looks way too cool. You got to have Joe Biden in a wheelchair. Got to have Joe Biden in a wheelchair. No, cannot be that. I like the Undertaker though as RFK Jr. Oh, that's good. Donald Trump saying he will stay in the race forever. Donald Trump says he'll never leave the 2024 presidential race. He'll never leave the race. I will never leave, Trump told Politico. Look, if I would have left, I would have left prior to the original race in 2016. That was a rough one. In theory, that was not doable. Trump spoke to the outlet as he flew between appearances in Georgia and North Carolina from New York. Trump revealed his indictment on Thursday. The indictment stems from special counsel Jack Smith, blah, blah, blah. Donald Trump saying he will never leave. He will be in it forever. Because a lot of people are saying right now, especially it's super gross, some of the people inside of the Republican presidential race against Donald Trump, a lot of Republicans, Asa Hutchinson comes to mind, John Bolton apparently says he's running, the great mustache. Crispy is also running, Krispy Kreme. All the three of those guys were singing the blues this weekend, saying, Donald Trump, you got to drop out of the race. Drop out of the race. Even Rachel Maddow, in her psychosexual obsession with Donald Trump, was saying, you should cut a deal with the DOJ that you'll just drop out. It's not going to happen, ladies and gentlemen. It won't happen. Donald Trump is as good as gold. In a moment here, we're going to show you the details of Joe Biden's real deal in Ukraine. This is the real story that we should be covering. We needed to sort of give a precursor to Donald Trump's arrest, indictment tomorrow again, and we'll have live coverage all day for you of that. It should be quite interesting here in the state of Florida. This ain't Kansas anymore, Dorothy. This ain't New York. You're in Florida. It's going to be interesting. But first, ladies and gentlemen, good as gold. Where does that comment come from? Where does that saying come from? Good as gold. Well, it means that gold can, outlast any other investment. That's why gold was delivered to the Christ child. That's why gold is what's covering Mar-a-Lago and what covers Donald Trump's properties. It gives the edifice of value, of sustainability, of longevity, of permanent value through civilizations and civilizational collapse. And if you look around at our monetary theory right now, you can say, I don't think things are very stable. And you're right. Gold has always served as a hedge against fiat currency, and that's why I encourage you to invest, maybe to diversify into gold. Do that with my friends at Allegiance Gold. They can help protect your IRA or 401k with physical gold and silver. If you prefer, you can have it delivered directly to your hot little hands. You can hold it, stare at it, look at your reflection in it, and say, my precious. Get up to $5,000 in free silver and qualifying purchase when you visit protectwithbenny.com. Go to protectwithbenny.com today. Do not let Joe Biden play Monopoly money with your hard-earned savings. Protect your future with Allegiance Gold now. Protecting your future with lots of cash is exactly what the Bidens were doing in Ukraine. Burisma executive says that they paid Joe Biden and Hunter Biden $5 million each to end the corrupt investigations as Republicans revealed the contents of the FBI document showing the first family's alleged criminal scheme. Oh my. Hot damn. So, ladies and gentlemen, Burisma executives are now coming forward saying that they have the bank records, they have the money, the wire information. You are now going to see, as we have been detailing here, the Privat bank, the bank of the oligarch that owned the TV station that gave Zelensky his start. The oligarch, his name's Viktor Kolomoisky. The oligarch that controlled Burisma. The oligarch that controlled the banking system in Ukraine, that paid the Bidens. The way they thought they could cover their tracks was because one man owned everything. This is classic scumbag, track-suited Eastern European, greaseball, rat-like behavior. This is the connecting point for the Bidens. And who is behind it all? Well, now the people who are involved in this entire scheme and scandal, which is the greatest pay-for-play in American history that we know of, are coming forward. Burisma executives are saying that Hunter and Joe Biden got $5 million each to end the investigation into Burisma. Republicans reveal contents of FBI documents showing the first family's alleged crime scheme. Now, Lauren Boebert was on our show saying this before you heard it anywhere else. And we do want to spike the football here and say, you heard it here first. We are hustling, we are grinding on this program, on the Benny Show, to make sure that you are getting access to the world around you and the people who are making these decisions and actually coming up with these revelations. Lauren Boebert breaking the news before it broke. Watch. Where did you just come from? What did you see?
Yes, so I just came from one of our SCIFs to view the 1023 documents from the FBI. Now, this is an FBI source that provided this information to the FBI. Just a couple of weeks ago, the FBI denied that this document even existed, and Chairman Jamie Comer pressed them on that and said, we know that this is there, we want to see it. And when Director Christopher Wray failed to produce those documents, he was threatened to be held in contempt of Congress. We were supposed to be having a markup today to hold him in contempt so we could put that on the House floor to vote for it. But he said, hey, how about we let all committee members see this document, and then there's actually more documents that relate to this as well that we will also let you view. But Benny, that's not enough. After seeing these documents, the American people need to see what is in here. These are not classified, but obviously they are secure right now. And the information is so damning, not just to Hunter Biden, but to Joe Biden, the big guy. And that is quoted in the documents.
So, wait a second. Lauren Boebert saying that it's not a $5 million bribery scheme for the family. It's $5 million direct payments to the Bidens in order to develop natural gas and in order to push American policy to develop natural gas and energy and fracking in Ukraine. Now, how would we find out the details of this scheme and scandal, and who has been the lone voice crying out into the wilderness through the blackness of it all for legitimately years now? His name is Senator Ron Johnson. He got the documents in 2019 showing the Biden family corruption when they were trying to impeach Donald Trump for Joe Biden's crimes. You will recall that Donald Trump said in a phone call, you got to look into this Biden family, man. They were really corrupt in your country. And Zelensky said, hey, I got a better idea. How about we start a war in order to cover up our tracks and flood and destroy literally all of this evidence? This is a better idea. Senator Ron Johnson is saying, I was right, spiking the football and doing his touchdown dance. Watch.
In terms of Burisma, that's what this $5 million, or sounds like $10 million of bribe money paid. This is all around Burisma and their corrupt oligarch, Mykola Zlochevsky. He was his assets were seized by the UK in 2014, same time when Hunter Biden and Devin were joining the board. 2015, he was officially declared a fugitive. That's when Victor Shokin was hired as Prosecutor General. 2015 we'll find out is when all this activity was going on with the Bidens. 2016 is when Shokin opened up investigation, and within 3 months, Shokin was fired, and that's about the same time that Vice President Biden was talking to Poroshenko and demanding the firing of Shokin. So it's incredibly corrupt. It's incredibly dirty. The Bidens knew exactly the type of people they're dealing with, but the mainstream media has by and large ignored it. But it is interesting.
So it's hard because a lot of these names are going to be foreign to you. There's going to be a lot of different names thrown around. Mykola was a oligarch in charge of Burisma. Victor Kolomoisky was the oligarch in charge of the network behind Burisma, so on and so forth. We'll actually create a diagram here, and it'll help actually set the record straight, because this will be the main issue going into the 2024 election. This is it. We now have the evidence. That's what everyone is saying. That's what they're saying behind the scenes to me. I had a meeting this weekend with Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene. Both of them have seen this document. we were speaking at the same event. They have it. This is the evidence. This is what will bring down the Biden regime. And how will they do it? Let me just lay this out very, very plainly, not using too much jargon and not using too many Ukrainian names get lost in the ether here. A man named Viktor Shokin was a prosecutor who was looking into the graft, corruption, and monopolies inside of Ukraine that were crippling the nation, that was hurting, obviously, the Ukrainian people and all of the investments there. This man was looking into the obvious and clear monopoly inside of the oil and gas industry run by Burisma. This man had the power to suggest prosecutions for some of the deeply corrupt individuals there in Ukraine. Viktor Shokin is a good guy. Viktor Shokin is the G-man. Viktor Shokin is the dude who was trying to get Ukraine on the up and up. You have to meet certain thresholds in order to join NATO, in order to get IMF monetization. You need to hit certain thresholds of non-corruption. If you're going to get international money flowing into your country, if you're going to get investment, you got to show that you can run somewhat of a stable economy. Viktor Shokin is the guy who was trying to root out corruption. So what happened? A two-step process. One, the people on Burisma said, hey, why don't we, in order to protect our corruption, go to the United States of America and hire the person who is a high-ranking member of a corrupt institution inside of America known as the Biden family. We'll throw this guy, major crack problem, major human sex trafficking problem. Either way, it doesn't matter, doesn't speak Ukrainian, never been in natural gas. His family says they want to ban all fossil fuels. Doesn't matter. Who cares? Toss him on our board. His dad's the vice president. We'll get his father to use as leverage, as bribery money, holding above the heads of our government, bribe money in order to solve our problems. And then we'll pay him for it. It's as simple as that. Simple as. Simple as. Now, luckily for us, we have a couple of pieces of evidence that point to this scheme. One, we have Joe Biden bragging about this scheme on camera. Bragging about getting the legitimate prosecutor, the person who is looking into the crimes of Burisma, bragging about getting that guy fired by holding up American money as ransom money. Go.
I remember going over convincing our team, or others too, convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over for, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, I'm not going to, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid at the time. Well,
do you know the person who was solid was eventually put in jail for corruption? You know the person that Joe Biden had installed instead of the legitimate prosecutor Shokin? That guy that guy was in prison before for corruption, and then that guy went to prison afterward for corruption. That's who Joe Biden says they put in place someone solid. Now, so we have Joe Biden bragging about this on the record. It sure would be nice if we had Joe Biden's private phone calls with Ukrainian leaders talking specifically about this scheme. Oh, you know what? We just so happen to have them. You've probably never heard these recordings. They're not widely played. If they were recordings of Donald Trump, they'd be sang right after the national anthem. But here's Joe Biden literally talking to Poroshenko, who was the president of Ukraine at the time, saying, you got to get this prosecutor fired. My son and I got to get paid. Gotta get paid. See? Listen.
A second positive news for you. Yesterday, I meet with the General Prosecutor Shokin.
Yes.
And despite of the fact that we didn't have any corruption charges, we don't have any information about he doing something wrong, I especially asked him, no, it was the day before yesterday, I especially asked him to resign as his position as a state person, and despite of the fact that he has a support in the parliament. And as a finish of my meeting with him, he promised me to give me the statement on resignation. And 1 hour ago, he bring me the written statement of his resignation.
Great.
And this is my second step for keeping my promises.
I agree.
You've never heard that, have you? Nobody is quite sure where that call leaked from, but nobody has ever questioned its authenticity. That is the Ukrainian president bending to the bribed out Joe Biden, who is using American taxpayer dollars as leverage over his head. $1 billion in loan guarantees to Ukraine, getting a prosecutor fired. You could hear there Poroshenko saying he's not a corrupt individual. I don't know why you're so obsessed with getting this guy fired, but I asked for his resignation so that we could get the money because we need the money because we're Ukraine. We're a poor nation. We're a third world country. And Joe Biden sitting there laughing and wheezing, saying, got it done. This is payday, baby. Now, we have something very interesting to bring your attention to, and we're going to be researching more of this. We know there's going to be a major indictment news cycle tomorrow to try and distract people from this, but we want to just drop into the ether here. Who had the real power in this relationship? The real stemming of power comes from a man named Barack Obama. Because Barack Obama was the actual president. Barack Obama is the person who actually signs off on budgets. Barack Obama is the person who actually looks at the details of these things and allows the money to flow or not flow. Barack Obama is the person that Joe Biden said in that very famous clip, hey, call Barack Obama. Call him. Obama promised us the money. Oh, give him a call. What's Obama's connection to this? What's Obama's connection to all of this? That's a real question you got to ask. Because the person who's really pulling the strings, the person who actually had the power was never Joe Biden. It was actually Barack Obama. That was illuminated for us, Dan Bongino's recent episode. Dan Bongino, of course, worked for Barack Obama. We'll be joined here in a moment by a whistleblower who also worked for Barack Obama, Mike McCormick, who has been blowing the whistles on the Biden's crimes in Ukraine and is a very, very brave man, and we're very excited to talk to him. But ladies and gentlemen, a man who worked in the Secret Service for Barack Obama, effectively, Dan Bongino, saying, hold up, the person actually being protected here inside of this corruption is Obama, not Joe Biden. Joe Biden had no power. Joe Biden had no intelligence. It was Obama who was complicit in all of this, at the very least, criminally complicit. And that's a real question here. What did he know, and when did he know it? Watch.
Spygate, Obama was in charge. Collusion hoax, Obama's in charge. The Hillary email scandal, Obama's in charge. The bribery scandal, Obama's in charge. There's a common thread. This isn't a conspiracy theory. What did I just say that's not factually accurate? Now, as this Biden scandal explodes with this allegation that he took a $5 million bribe as vice president, Obama's vice president, keep that in mind. Andy Biggs appeared on Fox yesterday. He was talking about these massive payoffs they have bank records of. They now have bank records. Nobody disputes the authenticity of these bank records flowing into the Biden Inc. crime network while he's vice president. Nobody disputes it.
So I'm going to show you a fascinating article here, archived, ladies and gentlemen, from the Obama era, reaching out into the archives and pulling up this absolutely fascinating article about how the Obama State Department was shocked. This is from the Wall Street Journal. Shocked at what the Bidens were doing in Ukraine. Republican probe finds Hunter Biden's Ukraine work raised major concern with Obama officials. The Obama administration officials raised major concerns in the White House in 2015 about Hunter Biden serving on the board of a Ukrainian national gas company while his father was vice president and led U.S. policy efforts towards the country. The Obama officials were saying, hold up, holy Moses. Hunter Biden's position on the Burisma board casts a shadow over the work of those advancing anti-corruption reforms in Ukraine, the report says. This from inside of the Obama administration. High-ranking officials at the State Department saying, whoa, wait a second. We're the baddies. We're the corrupt people. What's going on here? Marjorie Taylor Greene revealing that the FBI has more documents alleging Biden corruption. It's all coming collapsing down. The people who are involved, the good people who are involved, or even just the middle-of-the-road people with morality and a soul, are refusing to stay silent on this. Good men, when faced with actual corruption, break, and they must speak. They must say something. Somebody who is a good man, somebody who worked inside of the Obama White House, somebody who was a stenographer inside of the White House, and who has absolute clairvoyant insight into how this operation worked with the Bidens, is a very brave man. He is a whistleblower. His name is Mike McCormick, and he joins the program now. Mike, thank you so much for being on the program. We were blown away when you joined Jesse Waters' show on Fox. We could not believe that your commentary did not make international news. It is worthy of everyone to know your story, and I'd like to give the floor to you. Can you give us some of your background, sir?
Yes, Benny, thanks so much for having me on. So my background is I was a White House stenographer as a contractor from 2002 to 2014. And there was a little bit of a 3-year period in there when I did I left the White House and then came back in 2010. So I worked with President Bush and Vice President Cheney, and then President Obama, Vice President Biden, and then I left in 2018 under not great circumstances. It was a cancel culture thing. And that was after a year with President Trump and Vice President Pence. So my job was as a White House stenographer for the press office. I basically stood next to the press when the president or the vice president was talking to them, recorded what they said, and made a very fast transcript that I emailed back to the press office. They distributed to other, all their send list, which was other reporters that weren't there, plus government installations around the world, embassies around the world got it. So it was the official word of the White House spoken at that time. And so we traveled on Air Force One. I traveled on Air Force Two. I went to Ukraine with Joe Biden 3 times. I went to Russia with him. I went to China with him. And in 2020, I published a book about him, Joe Biden Authorized on the 2020 Crack of the Democratic Party. Because as I was watching them impeach President Trump, I was like, wait a minute, I know what's going on with Joe Biden behind the scenes. He should not be elected president. Well, here he is. So now we've got to bring the corruption out, and that's what we're doing. And thanks so much for having me on.
So I want to just set firmly here, you are not some type of raving partisan. You worked for Republican presidents, for Democrat presidents, for Republican presidents again. Your job was to deliver clear and precise messaging of what happened, the tick-tock of what actually happened, and to be accurate, yes?
Absolutely. You know, I was hired into the Obama White House by Barack Obama. I passed his FBI background check. I mean, I'm not partisan. I'm a registered independent. I wouldn't have been there if I was a Republican. They wouldn't have hired me.
So you got an opportunity to travel internationally with Joe Biden, as you just illuminated for us, to these countries that are now getting quite a bit of scrutiny. Can you tell us what those trips were like and what was revealed to you?
Well, that's why I wrote the book, because Joe Biden's unpresidential. He's always has been. There's no way that guy should have been elected president in a legitimate election. I saw that. I knew that. And that's why I put the book out. It came out in March 2020. Lockdowns hit a week after. No one talked about it. No one knew about it. And then suddenly he was the campaign from the basement guy. So in these countries, there's a chapter in my book about Joe Biden meeting Vladimir Putin in Moscow. It's called Bitch Slapped in Moscow. That's the chapter, because he got publicly humiliated by Vladimir Putin in this meeting. The press were there. No one reported the way I saw it. I was like, wait a minute. I've been in world leader meetings. One world leader doesn't treat another world leader that way and not get reported. And in his nutshell, what he did was Putin shut down the microphone in the middle of Joe Biden's sentence, cut all the lights off, told the TV guys to leave, and basically shut up Joe Biden right in the middle of a big meeting. That's hard to do, to shut up Joe Biden. Vladimir Putin did it. They've been at each other's throats ever since. That's what this whole the Burisma thing came out of that. And I think the Ukraine war is part of that too. It's awful what's happened out of Joe Biden's egotism and unpresidential behavior.
So let's zoom in a little bit, please, because these documents, this FD 1023 from the FBI, you're obviously being proven right here.
Yeah.
This is a news cycle about you being correct. You've been sort of the man calling out into the blackness for a while, and we've just come about your story, and we want to illuminate it for the American people because you've been correct. And so it must feel great to finally have hundreds of thousands of millions of people now seeing that you were right all along. What did you see in Ukraine specifically? What did you see the Bidens do?
Well, I was watching just as you were leading into this. So I'll start with the Shokin stuff. And we can go further back if you want, but Shokin, since you're talking about it, let's start with that. And here's the big thing about the whole my understanding. So when I wrote that book in 2020, I based on what I saw and heard and sort of experienced live, just standing at the fringe of what was going on. In 2021, Garrett Ziegler, the head of Marco Polo, gave me a copy of the Hunter Biden laptop. He said, no strings attached. He said, Mike, you know a lot about Biden. You should go into this and see what you can find. And I was delighted because I knew it would corroborate what I'd been saying. So I started writing a Substack, and the Substack is called Midnight in the Laptop of Good and Evil. And I started digging into the time periods when I was in Ukraine with Joe Biden and when I was in other places with Joe Biden. And so there's a long timeline that goes together. Joe Biden was interested in energy in Ukraine from 2009 on. I call him the mastermind of this Burisma plot. He knew who the players were from 2009 on. But to get specifically to Shokin. So what I've seen in the laptop, in September of 2015, the ambassador to Ukraine, Jeffrey Pyatt, comes out and does this major speech. We think Burisma is corrupt. He didn't use Mykola Zlochevsky's name per se, but he made this big speech about corruption in Ukraine and mentioned Burisma. While Hunter Biden was already on the board, everybody in America knew it was on the board. It was public notice. It was publicly announced in the middle of May in 2014. So a couple of months later, here they are. They're talking about, well, they're corrupt. Why were they doing that? Because they were setting up the removal of this guy Shokin behind the scenes. There are emails in the Hunter Biden laptop in November 2015. Joe is getting ready for a trip. He goes there in December 2015, and I'm on the plane with him. There's emails between Hunter Biden and a guy named Amos Hochstein. Amos Hochstein was the State Department energy envoy to the Obama White House, specifically working a lot with Joe Biden. He and Hunter meet in 2015. And then Joe goes to Ukraine. And Amos Hochstein was on the plane. So we land in Ukraine in the evening. And that day, there was no public events. Joe didn't do any speeches or anything. But what happened was there was an evening meal at a restaurant between the press that were on the trip and Amos Hochstein, Jeffrey Pyatt, and Colin Kahl, who was the national security advisor for the vice president at the time. And I was told, we want you to be there for the top of the meeting. So you're going to do a transcript of our remarks to the press. And so I did that. It's a background briefing. The transcript has never been released to the public. I'm the witness that can tell you they were there. The press who were there were Peter Baker, the New York Times. I think there was someone there from the Wall Street Journal, but I'm not sure. I don't remember. I haven't corroborated that with printed. And then Margaret Taleb of Bloomberg were there. So definitely Peter Baker and Margaret Taleb. And I wrote about them in that trip in my book. So they have this meeting. I don't really remember what was talked about, except they were talking generally about the corruption that they were seeing in the special prosecutor's office. That was Shokin. And then I left after about 20 minutes. It's called a topper. They did a topper. I left. I did the transcript. They stayed there at the dinner. I don't know what else was talked about at the dinner after I left. The next day, Joe Biden goes into the Ukrainian Rada, that's their Congress, and he delivers a speech. He's standing next to Poroshenko and Arseniy Yatsenyuk, then the prime minister. They don't look happy. The Ukrainians do not look happy. There's a lot of stress on the faces. Joe is about, we're fixing corruption, we're doing this. Meanwhile, he's already collecting money from Burisma. Hunter is collecting money. Those guys knew what he was doing was strong-arming his way into their pockets, really. And he was holding up this $1 billion in aid that he was going to leave on the plane with. He goes and does a speech. Hours later, we're on the plane and we're out of the country. So that's 2015. The phone call that you played was February 2016. It took that long for Poroshenko to work through this resignation by Shokin. It wasn't just a resignation. It was a twist his arm, forced him, who knows how it goes in Ukraine, but it was a strong arm move. And so he leaves. He was put in place by Poroshenko. I don't think Shokin was the prosecutor general at the time that Hunter was hired by Burisma in 2014. You know, when Hunter came on the board in 2014, May and April, actually April 18th is the day he was unofficially on the board getting paid. But officially, it was the middle of May 2014. There was another prosecutor, and then Poroshenko was elected in June. And Poroshenko brought in this guy Shokin. Well, Joe Biden started this phone call relationship with Poroshenko. He called that guy 80 times between June 2014 and the end of his term in 2017. That's almost once every 10 days. Nobody calls a world leader that often unless there's something really sketchy going on. It was almost like, I have to keep in close touch with him. I have to keep him in line. There's something going on here.
So Joe Biden was going there in order to enrich his family. Joe Biden was going there to fight corruption, and instead he was the corruption.
Exactly. He pulled in a lot of money for Hunter. He pulled a lot of money for himself. And the other thing he got to do was, Joe Biden at the time, you have to remember, in early 2014, had huge ambitions to be the next president. He wanted to run in 2016 instead of Hillary. He wanted to be the guy. And he put a lot of pressure on Obama over the course of his career there as the vice president to get all the plum assignments. Joe Biden did Iraq. Joe Biden went to Russia to face down Putin. Joe Biden went to Asia to represent for the Asia pivot. Joe Biden went to Ukraine to rescue Ukraine. And every single thing he did was a disaster. But the pressure was on Obama behind the scenes, and Obama just let him do it. And frankly, as someone who was in the White House, the Obama White House from 2014 on, as an Obama employee, Barack Obama at that point in time, all he cared about was his golf game. He wasn't in the game. This was a Joe Biden directed program. He wanted to elevate his status to be the next president. And then what happened? Bo got sick. Bo got sick in early spring 2015. He passed away in June 2015, and that took the wind out of his sails. He couldn't go on and campaign after that, even if he wanted to. He was talked out of it in September. So this is 2015, right? We're talking about going over there and getting Shokin fired. In 2015, Joe got talked out of being the presidential candidate by David Axelrod. There's emails back and forth in the Hunter Biden laptop, how much they hated David Axelrod for talking him out of that. This is all part of what happens with Shokin. It's just covering up his corruption. And now look where he is.
Wow. So, I mean, ultimately, Joe Biden was not president. Barack Obama was president. If you're going to hold up $1 billion in aid, Barack Obama has to know a little bit about it. Can you shed some light into what Obama's culpability in all of this might be?
You know, Obama knew all about it. Obama was covering it up from the start. So I'll move back another segment of time. We'll go back to the beginning of Joe's tenure as this, I'm going to do Ukraine and rescue Ukraine. So that process starts shortly after, actually. Hunter Biden gets $3.5 million from Yelena Baturina on February 14th, Valentine's Day in 2014. There's these huge protests on the Maidan Square there in downtown Kyiv. And all of a sudden, Hunter gets this money from this ally of Vladimir Putin. What happens a few days later? Snipers start killing people in Maidan. Biden gets on the phone with the then president of Ukraine, and he says, you got to get out of there. We're coming for you in the world court. You know, you're going to get prosecuted for war crimes. So the guy flees. He runs back to Russia. And then 2 weeks later, Vladimir Putin invades Crimea and takes it over with his, Green Men military invasion. That's when Joe Biden has to become the rescuer of Ukraine. Very soon after that, he goes to Poland. At the time, the former president of Poland was already on the board of Burisma, and he was a very good friend of Joe Biden. His name was Alexander Kwasniewski. He worked here in D.C. for a while, teaching a course at Georgetown. Hunter Biden in 2014 at this time was teaching a course at Georgetown. Joe Biden was very tied into Georgetown University. So Kwasniewski, Biden goes to Poland. Kwasniewski's on the board. He's in Poland talking about, we want to rescue Ukraine. We have to give them energy security. A couple of weeks later, there's emails. Hunter Biden has gone to Lake Como in Italy. He's met with Burisma executives. Then he comes back. There's a meeting at his dad's residence, the Naval Observatory, on April 8th, 2014. And that's just before Joe is due to go to Ukraine. And then April 16th, 2014 is when Hunter and Devon Archer go into Joe's West Wing office. There's emails stating, I want to be there. There's a calendar entry where I'm meeting Devon and Lukey, his young son, Devon Archer's son, who was the cover story. The cover story was Luke Archer's doing a book report. He wants to meet with Vice President Biden. That's the cover story. So they let him in. He goes in. As he's in the White House visitor logs, that's legitimate. At 11:18 on that day, he goes in. Hunter Biden's a family member. He gets facial recognition to go in. The guards see him. They know who he is. They just buzz him in. He never shows up in the visitor logs. So he's standing behind the camera in the background during this meeting. These guys walk out of this meeting and they start emailing their friends and their fellow investors. We're meeting with Burisma. We're meeting with other people about another company they did a scam with called Metabiota. That's April 16th, 2014. That night, Biden and Joe Biden and Barack Obama are in Barack Obama's limousine together in Western Pennsylvania. They did an event together in Western Pennsylvania and rode back from the event to the airport. There's a White House picture of both those guys standing outside of the limousine with their airplanes in the background, 2 airplanes on the tarmac, 2 guys standing by, and there's 2 limousines in the picture. But there's a selfie of Joe Biden in Barack Obama's limousine that he took that day. He's like, I'm riding the limousine with Barack Obama. So that's out there. So he was in that limousine. What were they talking about? Were they talking about Ukraine? Were they talking about golf and grandkids? They were talking about Burisma. They were talking about why was Hunter in the office today. They were talking about what's this thing with Metabiota. Metabiota, by the way, is the company that set up the bio labs in Ukraine. That was another scam that Joe and Hunter were running concurrent with Burisma. That's the 16th. On April 18th, 2 days later, Hunter Biden goes to New York. He's on the show Morning Joe's with Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski. And what does he do? He's talking about his other job, World Food Program. I'm a great guy. I'm a great guy. After that, he signs up to be on Burisma board. He used them as their cover story. They're his dupes. Those are the dupes of the Biden crime family. Morning Joe, don't believe a word they ever say. They're dupes. If they're lucky, they're dupes. If they're not lucky, they're in on it. So that's the 18th. The 21st, I'm on a plane flying into Ukraine. This is my first flight into Ukraine with Joe Biden. Joe knows at this point that Hunter Biden is on the board. No one else knows. There's media on the plane. My job as a stenographer is to sit in the back of the plane. Who comes walking back? Jake Sullivan. He has to do a briefing as a senior administration official. I'm there recording him. The press asks, what is this energy assistance you're bringing for Ukraine? He names 4 things. 2 of them specifically relate to Burisma. One is this thing called MERP, Municipal Energy Reform Program. That's money that goes out of the USAID directly to Burisma. That's him giving them a kickback scheme. And they don't know it. They don't know that Hunter's already on the board. And then he talks about we're bringing substantial assistance for their non-conventional gas reserves. That's what Burisma was specialties of. It's fracking. They're a fracker. They're a fracking company. They're the biggest fracking operation in Ukraine, private natural gas. So both these things are going directly into Burisma's pocket from American taxpayers. Jake Sullivan says that as directed by Joe Biden, right in the front of the plane. I told this to the FBI in February, just a few months ago. Did a witness statement. FBI, I'm a witness. Here's the crime. It's public corruption. Have not heard back. I took that information and I put it together with other information and sent it to the grand jury, the U.S. Attorney David Weiss in Delaware. David Weiss, U.S. Attorney guy, I should be a witness in front of your grand jury, and have not heard back. They don't want me to be a witness in their grand jury, because when I'm a witness in their grand jury, that becomes evidence. And so right now, Congresswoman Boebert has the evidence in these documents. I have the evidence as an eyewitness. I will testify under oath anywhere of what I've just told you.
And this is the evidence that you say will put either Joe Biden in jail or get him impeached.
Impeached, yeah. And this is, and so here's, and there's even more. So we'll go back 1 week from where they have this meeting in the West Wing, April 16th. We'll go back a few days. April 11th and 12th. Hunter Biden has a special relationship with the Secret Service. They're traveling with him everywhere. He's got protection detail. And the Senator Johnson's committee finally got out of the Secret Service the travel records of Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden does go to Baltimore on April 10th. That's like a Thursday. They have records of that. He does go on April 13th with his brother to Houston with the Secret Service. They provided records of that. But on the 11th and 12th, there's no record of where Hunter Biden was. I've got an email, and I did a big Substack about this. Hunter Biden sent an email to his parents. There's a special email address that Joe used. It was a secretive email address. It was robinware456@gmail.com. So I did a search for that in the Hunter Biden laptop that Marco Polo gave me. Up pops up this funny email on April 11th, and it's kicked back. It's like, does not, this didn't get through. So I clicked on it, I looked at it. It was actually Hunter Biden had sent his sister Ashley an email that got kicked back. He had the wrong address. But beneath it were his other family members who had the right address. And one of them was Robin Ware 456. He was telling them that Maisie's basketball tournament is going to be in Wilmington tomorrow, April 11th. Here's the schedule. Her basketball games are going to be 6 miles from Joe Biden's house. This is the time period when the Secret Service does not provide his records. We don't know where Hunter is. I've asked the Secret Service, where was Hunter? Do you have his records? No comment. They don't want to tell me. That day, April 11th, my suspicion is, my theory is, he and Maisie drive up there. They go together. They're at the tournament. And I've emailed the coach of the team. Never heard back. I said, hey, look, this is dangerous for Joe Biden. If you have exculpatory evidence that he wasn't there, please tell me. Never heard back. April 12th, there was these series of events, these basketball. Joe Biden loves his family. He brags about his granddaughter's basketball. If there was a basketball tournament where she was playing 6 miles from his house and he was there, he would have gone. There's no record of him being there officially, but the Secret Service has those records. They know where he was. That night on April 12th, and my theory is Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, and Beau Biden had a meeting courtside while Maisie's playing basketball. And they talked about Burisma. They talked about a lot of things, but they talked about Burisma. That night, Hunter Biden writes a 22-point email, very specific, very technical, to his partner, Devin Archer. This is how we're going to run it with Burisma. And my guy can't be involved in this first trip. We can't get their expectations up of my guy on this first trip. He's talking about the trip that was just that day was announced. Joe Biden's going to Ukraine April 21st. So he sends us email. Did he send it from Joe Biden's house? If he did, that's a crime. Did he have a meeting with Joe Biden that day and send that email? Maisie Biden is the witness. If they ever call Maisie Biden to be a witness in front of a grand jury or a congressional hearing, and she has to swear an oath and give testimony, she can bring down her father and her grandfather's criminal activity right there. Was Joe at your basketball game? Was Hunter at your basketball game? I don't know. Yes, no. What's her answer? Those are all the facts that would end Joe Biden's presidency right there.
So you're referring to this 22-point email that we've covered in the show. We'll toss it up on screen here. As somebody who's gone through a considerable amount of Hunter Biden's emails and his laptop. And I wish I had that little device from Men in Black where I could shoot it into my eyes and I could flash my eyes and I could forget everything I've seen on Hunter Biden's laptop. I really wish I had that. Nonetheless, this email is not from Hunter Biden. It's not his writing. This is clearly a State Department nomenclature email lifted from a classified document that was handed to Hunter Biden. I mean, that is my supposition, but I've read a considerable amount of this man's private emails, and this was not written by him. This was something that Joe Biden, to your point, most likely handed off from Jake Sullivan or his team, and Hunter Biden copied and pasted it. There's got to be a version of this document somewhere inside of the Biden files, and that's maybe why they're keeping them so close to the chest. Mike, we thank you for illuminating this evidence for us. There's probably a much longer conversation that we need to have here about this, and we want to have you back on. We thank you for your bravery. A lot of people are skipping the country when they come out against the Bidens. You're one of the few who are standing strong and who are working with congressional investigators, and we say Godspeed to you. We have your Substack here. How else can people support your work?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And here's the thing. I get a lot of comments in my Substack. We're praying for you. We, appreciate your courage. I'm not worried about it. God is my editor. I find these things because I just find them, I think, through divine intervention. So I'm not worried about that. You can read my Substack is Midnight in the Laptop of Good and Evil. Free subscriptions are welcome. Paid subscriptions are really appreciated. If you get a paid subscription, you get a copy of my book. And I'd love to get some paid subscriptions. It can really free up my time to spend a lot more time digging into this. The other side of this is the metabiota side, and that's very dark. That's what I'm going into. I'm on Twitter at Joe Unauthorized. I'm on Truth Social at Joe Unauthorized. And the Substack is where it's at. So I'll see you there, hopefully.
Mike McCormick, a brave man. Please be a regular on the show. You clearly know this better than virtually anyone, and I hope they call you as a witness in this trial. Godspeed, sir.
Thanks, Benny. Appreciate you having me on.
hot damn, ladies and gentlemen, straight off the presses. A man who was a Barack Obama employee. Talking about how Barack Obama knew about the entire Ukrainian scandal, the criminal enterprise that the Bidens were running there, and how they knew about it. We need to have a much longer form conversation with Mike McCormick. My God, that man is a font of knowledge and information and wisdom. Somebody who is not is Joe Biden, who claimed that transgenders are being persecuted across America. Who is a transjester, ladies and gentlemen? Well, of course, it's court jesters. It's the court jesters from like medieval times, and they're being persecuted. Listen to Joe.
As Commander-in-Chief, I was proud to have ended the ban on transgender Americans serving in the United States military.
It is time for all of us to bow our heads and to remember those transgesters who, you know, they're looking for their identities as court jesters. And it's hard as a court jester these days. The entertainment business is tough, you know? So let's remember them. Let's remember them. Speaking of a court jester and somebody who regularly humiliates herself, not just because she wears shower curtains from Bed Bath & Beyond, but because she's allowing the most public elder abuse in human history to happen to her husband, Jill Biden, embarrassing herself this weekend.
I think that, yeah, this is on. Joe, you're going to have to come back out because we have our entertainment and everybody's waiting for that. Not that they're not waiting for you. So, Joe, come on back. He'll come back out. He'll come back out after the entertainment.
What are you wearing? What the hell is that? Bed Bath & Beyond is going out of business, and so Jill Biden is clearly going and raiding the shower curtain section and drapes for her dresses. And it is so tough these days to watch these clips, and you are witnessing, again, the most public elder abuse in the history of humanity. We got to pray for them, and we got to pray for this nation, and we got to stay solid. We got to stay centered. We got to stay grounded, and we will win. How do we do all that? Our verse of the day. Romans 8:28. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for the good of those who are called according to his purpose. Are you called today? The answer is yes, you are. Find God. Save this nation. March together with me, ladies and gentlemen. We will win. The victory will be ours in this lifetime or the next. God promises us that. It's your boy Benny, and this has been The Benny Show. See ya.